This is RSBANDB Update, episode 627, recorded Friday, July 14th, 2017, the Overwatch special. Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us, sitting in for RSBANDB Update. This week, as promised, we're taking a little bit of a break from the RuneScape coverage this week and next week after the month of July with the release of Metaphos and all the discussion that came with it, for good or for worse, depending on your opinion, depending on how you feel about expansions in RuneScape, but nonetheless. We do have some content for you guys this week, and this week we're going to be discussing Overwatch. Overwatch is Blizzard's first-person shooter game. We'll get to that in just a little bit. But here this week is King Cullah. You guys will remember from the RSBANDB Update podcast in the past.
Oh, hopefully they remember me. You can also find me as the wonderful editor of RSBANDB Informer.
Oh, so you're the one that makes everyone look great.
Yeah, including you, Shane.
Thank you. And also to discuss Jeff, a very special guest, is Jeff from the Overwatch team, our competitive Overwatch team.
Hey.
Jeff is a friend of Earth's, and, there's a huge history here between all of us, but suffice to say we're all friends now, and we all play Overwatch together, and you seemed like a natural pick to have on the podcast because you've asked about it so many times, and you wanted to see what it was like, and well, you know a lot about Overwatch, too, and lots of other things, including numbers, so I thought we'd have you on the show.
Well, thank you for having me. This should be a lot of fun.
Yes, so before we get into Overwatch, I'm going to do a little bit of a brief rundown of the RuneScape news this week, including the big RuneScape 2018 survey, and encourage you guys to all go out and vote in the survey and complete it. It takes about 15 minutes of your time. But you really should do this if you are at all playing RuneScape this year, or you plan to be playing RuneScape in the next year or so, because there's a lot of stuff in here regarding the direction that the game can take, whether or not we want new content or if we want old content to be reworked. Examples of old content being reworked are the construction rework, the mining and smithing rework, finishing old quest lines, for example, focusing on graphical reworks rather than expanding the map, that sort of things. There's also an important emphasis on there. If you're interested in quests, you can choose what kind of quest you want, or if you want quests near the top of the list. And if you're in clans, you can rate the clan updates also in the top tier of the list as well. I personally prioritized skill reworks, finishing old quest lines, and clans, because clans, as you guys will know, if you guys are in one in RS, the tools we have could really use some work. So you can find this on the RuneScape website, runescape.com, and fill out their 2018 survey. And, once we get back at the end of the July, we'll be talking about the progress update that Jagex is going to be putting out on the 28th of July, and I'm assuming we'll see some of the results from this at RuneFest in September. Also in RuneScape news this week, the Quick Prayers came out, and with the quick prayers this week, there was some question about the usability of these quick prayers and the fact that it defaults to only a prayer menu option rather than a curse menu option. If you want to access curses in the first quick prayer preset, you need to delete the incoming first preset that is set to prayers, and then you can make a curse preset. And then following from that, you can just drag this preset down to your action bar or wherever you'd like to have it, and then you can activate it whenever you go to Nex or the Queen Black Dragon or whatever boss you end up fighting. That threw me for a little bit of a loop. Jagex has said that they heard about this and will be making some changes in the future. So if you guys are listening to this and are unsure as to why you can't put in curses on this quick prayer preset, you got to delete it and set it up as a curse preset. Also, just a couple of little patch notes this week from the release notes. A fairy ring has been added to the Kazari jungle with a code of CJS, and you require 5 bitter-capped mushrooms in order to activate this. This, of course, is a good fairy ring if you are doing clues and you get sent down to the Kazari jungle, beats needing to go chop through that huge, thick layer of jungle. Also, clue scrolls will no longer send you down to the Chaos Tunnels, which, if you guys have ever done one of those Chaos Tunnel clue scrolls, you'll note that those are very, very hard to work with because there's so many attacking NPCs, and you got to go through the wilderness to get there, so that's great. And also, the summoning bar now displays an alternative color for special move points. That happens in the RS3 interface when you click the summoning bar. It shifts color a little bit to become more green. A little bit hard to see, I'd imagine so if you're colorblind, but nonetheless, this is here to kind of show that, okay, this is special points and not summoning points. So there's your quick RuneScape rundown for the week, everyone. Hopefully that'll keep you situated until we get back at the end of the month with regular RS content. So now the meat of the matter, Overwatch, what you guys are here for. So I'm going to start off by just asking you guys, what spurred you guys to get into Overwatch?
Well, I think it was a lot of different things that spurred us on. I think, for one, it was Blizzard, and they're coming out with a new game. And generally, Blizzard games are on point for how good they are and how well they're made and how big the community is that gets attracted to them. And I think the second one is that it was an FPS, which is kind of out of Blizzard's expertise, but they managed to do it really well. And I think there was a lot of on-point marketing that was around it, and there was a lot of hype driven towards it. So I think I waited a little bit after launch, I think, to get it. And a lot of other people were getting it and saying it was really good, and a lot of friends were getting it. So I said, let's give it a try.
How about you, Jeff?
Yeah, it was sort of a similar thing for me. I had some people that were playing the beta, and they were telling me that it was a Team Fortress on steroids. That they kept everything that Team Fortress did well, but they improved on things that it didn't. And for me, I'd never really been part of one of these Blizzard games at launch. So that was something that sort of drew me to the game at the very beginning.
All right. And as you guys both mentioned, Overwatch is a FPS, which stands for first-person shooter if you're not into that kind of video game. But within the first-person shooter, we have interesting game modes, including Payload, in which you guide a cart to a cart or a bomb, I guess it is, cart, bomb, to a series of checkpoints to get to the end and claim victory. You also have King of the Hill, which I think is self-obvious that you just want to keep as many people and hold the central point for as long as you can. Also capture points, where you have to capture a certain control point to move on to the next one. And through that, if you manage to do it before the enemy team does, you claim victory. And also the newest game mode that they added is Elimination, in which you have a team of 6 or 3, and then if you win a round, you are locked out from using those heroes again in the next round, which we'll get to in just a little bit. But
I think at this point we should also mention that for anyone who doesn't know, Overwatch is a six person on a team shooter. It's not your normal Counter-Strike or
Call of Duty
or Half-Life or Call of Duty kind of shooter. It's basically team based, and you really have to work well with your team to be able to complete the objectives. And none of the main objectives are based on the traditional team deathmatch setting. So you actually have to work with your team, and it's not just whoever gets the most kills who wins. It's actually a lot more intricate than that.
Yeah, and that transitions nicely into why we like Overwatch. And I think, I'll just start off with a point here, is that it reinforces good teamwork, and it also allows you to be competitive against an enemy team without, necessarily investing too much into the game. I think that's a good starting point.
Yeah, I think the investing time into the game is one of the real big sellers for this game. We were playing with the group last night, and we had someone who hadn't played in a couple weeks, and he was able to come in and pick players that were, relatively speaking, easier to play than others, but he was able to come in and be just as effective as everyone else. And it's not one of these games where you just have to pour hours and hours and hours into it. in order to sort of be competitive in a sort of, I don't know, quick play environment.
Yeah. And, and you touched on a very good thing. And this is, of course, coming back to the heroes, which we'll talk more about later in detail, is that if you want to play a very simple hero that just runs around and is useful to the team, you can do that. Or on the other hand, if you want to play someone who's really intricate that needs to hit every shot that they make, you can do that as well. So there's a huge skill cap to this game, ranging from very low to very high as well. So
yeah, and I think that's something that's really interesting, is that it's a first-person shooter where you don't actually have to be good at shooting. There's a lot of different things you can do. The healers, especially, are very competitive. One of the downfalls of a lot of games that have healers in them is that the healers are either very squishy and they're not very they can't hold up very well, or that they're really boring to play. And I think this one has kind of nailed that in the sense that they're all of them are really fun to play, and they all have different skill sets that are good in different scenarios. And I think they've done that a lot with a lot of the other heroes as well. And that's another reason why I think I like it, is because you can go in and you can be as casual as you want, and you can still win games. Or you could also be like super competitive. You can invest a lot of time and skills into the game. You can rise up and you can have fun that way as well. It really all depends on how you want to play.
Yeah, the competitive Overwatch games, this is something I told all of you guys back when competitive first launched is, competitive is going to be different than quick play. There's going to be different types of people in competitive, and there's going to be a different mentality to competitive, not just from us and maybe from us, but also from the different players. Because, in quick play, you might find people who are messing around with certain characters that don't work as well. I think we have all seen that before, right?
Yeah.
Indeed.
And then you can also then go to competitive, where you have split-second reaction time decisions that need to be made, intricate target calling setups, and intricate match character setups as well that can make or break your game, mechanic-wise, location-wise, everything. So whether you are just picking this game up for your first-person shooter, or if you're a veteran of competitive Counter-Strike, for example, there's going to be something in Overwatch that you're going to be able to play, and there's going to be something in there that you're going to enjoy. And I think that's why we were able to introduce so many people to it, is because it's not a game that, is just go out and kill people. There's a huge depth to it, which is really great.
Yeah,
I also think that
something for everyone.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just think that there's a little something for everyone. So no matter what background you have or what skill set you have, you can just jump right in and have fun.
Yeah. All right. What were you going to say, Jeff?
Oh, I was also going to say that I think one of the other reasons that it's really good is that it continues to evolve. I mean, if you look at the game as it was at launch versus what it is now, it's very different, and they've really done a good job of optimizing it and listening to the community and fixing what doesn't work and keeping what does. And I think that's a really good trait of this game.
Yeah. Another also really good thing that I'm going to talk about before we move on to I think what is perhaps the greatest selection of diversity in this game, aside from the nationalities, is that there's no real pay to win in this game. You buy it once, and you have everything you need to be successful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the only way the way that you pay for it is through cosmetics, and everyone else has the same stats, no matter how much money you throw on the cosmetics. It just looks a bit different, perhaps. And I think that's for this type of game. I think that really does want to appeal to everyone and put everyone on the same level. I think it's actually a really good business decision for them to do that.
Yeah, and I mean, one day Blizzard is probably going to make Overwatch free to play, just like they've done with all their other games. Not for a while, but I imagine they will at some point. And by that point, maybe there will be enough people buying cosmetics to support that cost. As we know, RuneScape has a free-to-play model as well. So, Okay, so before we go into a little bit more discussion on Overwatch, I think another great thing that we haven't talked about yet are the maps, and that's also what makes Overwatch great. Is that there's basically every kind of map you can imagine. There are light maps, there are dark maps, there are maps that focus on control points. There are maps that focus on King of the Hill, you name it, and map diversity is really huge in Overwatch. So I like the maps as well, and I think that's another reason why we don't get bored of it is the maps. So what do you guys think about the maps?
I think that a majority of the maps, there are a few that we'll probably talk about in a minute, allow you a tremendous amount of freedom to play however you want to play, depending on what character you're using. And I think that's the reason it doesn't get old, because you can say, okay, I'm playing this character. I want to try this route to the objective. Wow, this actually worked. Maybe I'll try it again. Or, oh, this wasn't such a good idea. Everyone is here. So I think that's one of the really, really, really good things about the maps in the game.
Yeah,
and something that I like about the maps is that you can't just choose a certain set of heroes for certain maps. Generally, most of them will work on all of the maps, and in certain scenarios, of course. So that if there's a way that you want to attack and you're more of a flanker style hero, you can probably do that because there's many different ways to get to an objective, or even to push a payload. You don't always have to just be behind the payload to do work. And I think that's something really good about the maps is that they're not just linear. They have a lot of different routes that you can go down,
and that fosters diverse gameplay.
Yeah,
yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
So favorite maps. I know we all like very specific maps to begin with, and I think the first one I want to mention is Ilios. I think this is our all-time favorite map, probably. Would you guys agree with that statement?
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah, Ilios is a map that's set in Greece. It is a control point map. So that means that you will capture point one, and then in quick play, it is best of 3. But if you're playing the competitive game mode, it is best of 5. So the first team to capture 2 control points in quick play wins. And if you're playing competitive, the first team to capture 3 will win. What do you
just a correction there. Ilios is actually King of the Hill, so it's basically the two teams trying to control the central control point and trying to cap it up to 100% each time.
Oh well, I got the numbers right. Thank you.
Yeah, you did get the numbers right though. It is a best. It is best of 3 in quick play and best of 5 in competitive.
Thank you for being my corrector, Patrick.
It's no problem.
So. What would you guys say about Ilios that makes it a favorite among all the others?
I would say that sort of what Patrick said earlier is that there are really no restrictions on heroes. You can play whatever you want or whoever you want, whenever you want, and we see some pretty interesting compositions on those maps. I think that's a lot of fun to see.
All right. How about you, Patrick?
I think one thing I like about Ilios in particular over some of the other King of the Hill points is just how different the different sets of maps are. I think something that we should note is that for the King of the Hill maps in particular, it's not just one map that you're playing on in the best of 3 or the best of 5. There's like 3 different types of maps in that general area, say Ilios. So there's like 3 different Greek-based maps. Like one is a well where there's a huge central pit that certain heroes can push other heroes into for quick and very fun ways to get control.
And there's even some that can come out of the hole once they've been pushed in too.
That's
exactly. True. And there's another one which is set in kind of like a ruined Parthenon, where there's a huge like depressed flat area in the middle where the control point is, and there's ledges on all sides where other players can come in and try and shoot down on you without being able to see them very well. And then another one, it's in like a building near a ledge, so there's another opportunity for you to get pushed off. So I think something that's really stands out about Ilios in particular is just the different ways that you take control of the objective. It's not just going into a central point. You have to really think about it a bit more.
Yeah. And for anyone wondering, you can see a video of Ilios at our Perfectly Unscientific Gaming YouTube channel, which you have commentated one of our shining moments on this map. So if anyone wants to see this map in full being played on competitive, I would highly recommend everyone have a look. And you can find a link to that in the show notes at update.rsbnb.com. So,
or even if you don't even like Overwatch and you just want to find out more about it, or even if you just love hearing my voice, you can also go and have a look at that, because I'm definitely there in full.
Okay, what else have you guys got for favorite maps?
I'm also a fan of Lijiang Tower.
This is the map set in China.
Yes, and it is. It has a lot of the same characteristics as Ilios. There are ways to fly in over the map or over the control point. There are ways to sneak around the back. You can also push people off. I play a character that does that a lot, so I like maps where that's a possibility. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I think I would also agree with Lijiang Tower. And one other that I really like is also Nepal, and it's got a lot of the same sort of characteristics. It's really interesting that a lot of our favorite maps are the King of the Hills. And I think that something that's really good is that you're not just on attack or defense, which kind of shoehorns you into a certain composition. You're basically on attack and defense, and it really makes for interesting gameplay, I think.
Yeah. I'm going to do a bit different than you guys, and I'm going to choose a map that is not pure King of the Hill. I am going to choose Eichenwald as one of my favorite maps in this game.
That's a good choice.
Eichenwald is a hybrid map of King of the Hill and Payload Escort. So basically what that means... why do I keep calling it Payload or Capture Point?
Sorry, you're warming up.
Basically, Eichenwald is where you have to capture the first point, and then that first point then turns into a payload, which then you take basically right to the end. So to be able to do the payload part, you have to actually capture a point. Right. So it's kind of like a...
So it's capture payload hybrid. Okay.
Exactly.
Right. I don't know why I thought that was King of the Hill. Perhaps I should just stick with RuneScape content for this. But anyways, another great part about Eichenwald is that it is visually spectacular. This map has a lot of greenery on it, which is very nice. And also, if you're not careful, you can end up walking off the edge at various points in this map. So Eichenwald is it's a pretty fun map, and it has wide open spaces, kind of like we've talked about before with Ilios. But when you get to the end of that map, there's lots of corners and choke points where it requires a bit more teamwork and ensuring that you don't end up destroying your entire team when going around a corner. So once again, Overwatch is really proving to be the first-person shooter game of variety, not only with the way the game plays, but the maps and the heroes. So I'm happy with Eichenwald, and this map is actually set in Germany, which we'll talk more about this later. But each of the heroes in this game are from a different country, and there is a German character in the game. So, all right, what would you guys say you would put up as a least favorite map? I think we all have the same answer here.
I think we do. I think it's Nimbani.
I would agree with that.
For all the reasons we were talking about how we like the other map, this map is the complete opposite. It's very linear. There isn't a lot of space to move around. You just sort of feel like the entire route is a choke point. And I know whenever it comes on with our group, there are lots of groans and no one is ever really happy.
But, we have pulled miracles off on this map before. And, it comes down to also, the map is pretty bad, but at the same time, anytime that you can get a hold of your situation in Overwatch, you can take stock of what's happening and come and pull out the win. And, I think that's what we pride ourselves on the most, is that we don't give up. And whenever we're given something that is absolutely horrible, like Numbani, and then we're stacked up against a horrible team composition on the enemy team, we always manage to pull it off. And I know, Patrick, this is something you talked about on the most recent video we did, or second most recent, where we basically converted up a loss to a win on Numbani, one of our least favorite maps. So, you know, and I think even though it's a map that we dislike, I think we can make it work. And that's, you know, a testament to the game. But I think we're getting off track of why we don't like Numbani. But you said very linear, lots of choke points. Anything else either you would add to that?
I would actually say that I actually don't despise Numbani quite as much. I kind of go with the flow on it, but the ones that I really don't like are the two capture point ones, such as Volskaya Industries or Temple of Anubis, which some of our other our teams really like, especially on defense, because they're very they're good defensive
they're good
maps.
Turtling maps.
Yeah, you can hold the point really well, and that's actually the precise reason why I don't like them, is because any other team is able to then turtle very well, and it doesn't create for good gameplay, because usually they just hunker down on the point and they're very static in that sense. Whereas I do like the payload ones where everyone's moving and they all have to do things differently, and the map where you are on the map is going to be constantly changing. Whereas with the two control points ones, there's basically only two set places where you're going to be attacking. And that's something that I particularly don't like, because I think with Overwatch, the dynamic gameplay and the dynamic nature of the maps, it leads to a lot of differences in how you're able to approach the game. And I think that's something that we actually haven't mentioned yet, about something that we probably all really like about the game, but that we haven't really mentioned, is the play of the games, and how they were able to create an algorithm in the game to be able to show the best part of, or the turning point or something of the game of one particular moment. And I think that's something that they're able to do. And there's so many highlights out there of really great plays of the game, and
this of course
I think
happens
that's another
at the
part
end. End of the match,
after the winner's been created or chosen, I should say. And I think that's another really good point of the game, and that's something that other games really don't have. That
was a very unique mechanic when it came out. And, you know, you can tell it's algorithmic based because when this game came out, there is a character named Bastion who, in the first month or so of the game being released, was constantly getting play of the game. I'm sure you guys remember that.
Yeah, I do. And what was something funny after they fixed that, so Bastion wouldn't have that many plays of the game, another character called Mercy would get a lot of plays of the game, and then they had to fix that as well. So it's something that is a testament to their team and how they were able to fix all these problems really quickly and try and make it more balanced for everyone.
All right. Well, I'm getting a sense that, you know, it's time to talk about heroes, because every discussion we have is moving on to them. So any other maps or things about maps that you don't like that we should mention before we move on?
That's good.
No. Yeah, we're good.
All right. So heroes. Heroes are, of course, what makes Overwatch. And, you know, when you hear the term hero, you might be thinking of your favorite MOBA, you know, League of Legends, Heroes of the Storm, Dota 2, that kind of thing. But they have taken that hero mentality and brought it into Overwatch. There's 24 heroes in total, spanning a variety of classes. They're broken up into offense, defense, tank, and support. Offense heroes include Genji, McCree. Well, actually, we'll go through each of these because listeners probably don't know who they are. Where would you guys like to start? Offense, defense, tank, or support?
Might as well start off with the offense, I guess.
All right.
Yeah.
We have that one first.
All right, so Genji is everyone's favorite weeaboo from Japan. He's a cybernetic ninja who specializes in covert strikes, flanking, and coming in behind people using his ninja stars, reflecting damage. He can reflect damage that's shot at him back, and he has an ultimate ability as well. And that's something else that we didn't talk about yet, is that as you play this game, you charge your ultimate ability. And each hero has a different ultimate ability. And Genji's, once he reaches 100%, he basically goes on a sword-slashing rampage and can slice and dice characters, killing them very effectively.
Yeah.
None of us here are Genji mains, as you can tell why we're not speaking too much about him.
Yeah. But something about him is basically he's basically the perfect attacking player, and whenever he shows up and he's played by a really good player, he basically ruins your day quite a bit of the time.
Yep.
Yeah. I will say that his ultimate is one of the more powerful ultimates. He can wipe an entire team if everyone is really close together and a healer gets sort of knocked off quickly. His ultimate has the ability to get what's called a team kill.
Yes, which is killing all 6 on the team. Next up, we have McCree, who is American. He is a sharpshooter with a revolver and focuses, I guess we could say, as best as single target DPS, because that's really all his gun can hit. You got to have really good aim to play McCree, because if you don't have a good aim, if you're keeping below a 30% hit rate with his gun, you're not going to do much damage with McCree. And this is where the point of quick play versus competitive comes in. Because if you're playing McCree in competitive and you can't hit targets, you will be a detriment to your team. So
yes, and if you're playing with random people, they will get mad at you. Like legitimately mad at you.
And this is one of those examples where McCree, you need a very high skill set to do well with. But on the other hand, we have other characters down the line where if you're not as good as with aiming, you can play them instead of McCree and do just as well. McCree,
I think something that's really good about McCree is his ability to one-on-one very well. If you're caught off guard and if he comes around and flanks you, he has this ability of being able to stun you for a couple seconds.
That's actually being changed in an upcoming patch.
Yeah, and then he can hammer the fan, which does his full 6 shots, and he can take you out pretty quickly.
Yeah, and McCree's ultimate also has the potential to wipe an entire team if they're within his field of vision. Basically, he charges up, and one click, if everyone is within his field of vision, he can take them out pretty much guaranteed, unless there's some kind of shielding effect going on.
Mm-hmm. His ultimate works in a very similar way to the Sheriff's ultimate ability. If you played Borderlands, the pre-sequel, it's a similar idea.
All right, that's a good analogy. Next up, we have Farah, who is the Egyptian rocket woman from Egypt. If you have played TF2 and you like the soldier, Farah would probably be a good choice from you. I'd call Farah probably a medium skill set character because, you can still have some success if you're not that great with aiming, but if you're really good at aiming, you will do wonders with Farah. Farah also has the ability to knock the other team around, so this is what you guys were talking about on maps like Ilios, where you have ledges and the well, and you want to put teams into or individuals into the well. You can do that with Farah quite easily with one of her abilities.
So one of the things we haven't talked about with the heroes yet is that almost every hero here is a counter to another hero in the game. And we just finished talking about McCree, and McCree is sort of a counter to Farah if you can aim, because Farah is flying around up in the air, and McCree has the ability to just a couple clicks if you can get her in the body and she's down. So if it's difficult to play Farah if you've got a good McCree on the other team.
And that's something also that Blizzard brings to all their games is a level of balance where each hero or each unit has a counter. StarCraft has this, Heroes of the Storm has this, and it's quite well documented in Overwatch as well. Next up, we have Reaper, which I guess, would you guys call Reaper a low skill set character or medium?
Probably lower. I mean, you still have to be able to aim with it, and you have to be able to have a lot of map awareness because he's kind of got shotguns. So his spread, once you get further away, is quite a bit. So you actually have to get up really close. But since he only has the ability to heal himself once he's taken out someone, you actually have to make sure that you're just not running into a bunch of damage from the enemy team.
And that was actually
So you have-
changed in a patch about a week ago. He now automatically heals whenever he shoots.
Oh, really? Well, that's
Yeah.
good, because
Yeah.
that was one thing that was stopping him from being more effective, I think. But I think if you're really good at Reaper, once again, you're going to do really well if you can aim properly. But you don't need quite as much accuracy as you would with McCree, I think.
You also get called Edgelord if you do that.
Yeah, he is basically the Grim Reaper, wears all black and has very emo-esque lines. So
We see a lot of play of the games from Reaper when the player is just sort of camping somewhere around the point, and as soon as their ultimate hits 100%, they'll pop out, and it's got a pretty powerful AoE type attack that can wipe out a huge portion of your team.
Yeah. Other things Reaper can do is he can go into Wraith form, which basically lets him move around the map quicker and reloads his guns once he's finished. And when he's in Wraith form, he can't be damaged. I think that runs for around 6 seconds, probably, give or take. And he also has the ability to teleport anywhere within line of sight, once again on a cooldown. So as you can see, these heroes are very dynamic. All right, so next up is Soldier 76, which is the character in Overwatch who is by far the oldest, and he's not a young man anymore. If you played Call of Duty and you enjoy the Call of Duty run and gun style, Soldier 76 is probably for you. He's got the carbine rifle and the grenades mounted on the gun, so the noob tube if you played Call of Duty before, and he can heal himself. Soldier 76, I'd say a low to medium skill cap character, but if you just want to run and gun, Soldier 76 is probably the one to use. I know you guys both play him frequently.
yeah, you don't even need to be that good at aiming to play him, which is really nice. Of course, if you can aim, it's very helpful, but it's not quite as necessary as, say, Pharah or McCree or even Genji.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's right. His ultimate aims for you. You just hit left click and it hits anyone on the screen.
Which is something a lot of people who played Call of Duty wanted with their Call of Duty hacks back in the day. So Soldier 76 is really just a parody on all of the Call of Duty games over the past decade and a half, I'd say. I think that's a fair assessment.
I'd agree with that.
I would too.
And of course 76 referring to 1776 because he is American and obviously a patriot being a soldier. So lots of people don't get that reference, but it's there. I know back in the day, our team used to call him Soldier 69 for some reason, but we'll leave that as a discussion.
There's no way of knowing what the reason was.
There you go. All right. Soldier 76. Anything else on Soldier 76 before we move on? I think he's a great guy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, he's just a good sort of filler character, right? He's a little bit of support, a little bit of DPS. He's not that difficult to use. So we see him on a lot of comps.
And he can also be very effective at taking out Pharah, him and McCree.
Yes.
So he's what we call also a hit scan character, meaning that when you fire at Pharah, the shot gets there right away and you don't need to wait for it to travel through the air. Whereas Pharah, you need to wait for her rockets to travel somewhere before they do the actual damage. Hence why we call McCree and Soldier 76 hit scan. Next up is Sombra from Mexico. She's a hacker and an infiltrator for behind enemy lines. She has an ability that lets you hack enemy team members, hack health packs, and when you hack an enemy team member, they can't use any of their abilities. And when you hack an enemy health pack, it recharges faster for your team, but it also enables the people on the enemy team to not be able to use that health pack. So clever Sombra hacking can be a true asset to the team. I'd say Sombra is probably a very difficult character to play. What would you guys say?
Yeah, and so here's the thing with Sombra is that she's usually taking up a DPS slot on the team. So she's got to hack enough and disrupt enough to make up for the fact that she's not doing a ton of damage usually.
Yeah. They basically equipped her with what looks like the model of an MP7, which doesn't do much damage at all. And she's also a fairly squishy character, too. So she has to utilize her personal cloaking device and teleportation grenade, which lets her move vast distances before she's seen. So if she's not disrupting, you're right, she is probably taking up a DPS slot on the enemy team, or on our team. So I don't think any of us play Sombra. I think our two main Sombra players, push comes to shove, are Earth and Trekkie. I think we'd agree with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I think it is something to note that if you're really good at it, you can really help the team, of course. But it's very difficult to be able to play well on it, and it requires certain situations, I think.
Yeah.
For it to do well.
All right.
Yeah.
Next up is Tracer. Tracer is by far the smallest hero in game, the most squishiest, but also the fastest. Tracer is equipped with, what are they called? Pulse cannons? Tracer's weapons? They're basically...
Maybe.
Something
yeah,
like
they're
that.
basically two mini submachine pistols that can do a good amount of damage up close towards enemies. But of course, because Tracer is so squishy, she needs to be buzzing around and preventing the enemy who she is trying to target from getting them in their forward arc. So Tracer is all about speed and has abilities that allow her to dart forward in the direction that she is facing 3 times. And she also has an ability that lets her rewind time so that she'll go back a number of seconds to where she was. This also lets her recover health and get out of these precarious situations when she's trying to flank a very large tank character, which we'll get to in just a little bit. I'd say Earth is probably our Tracer, and that's at one point what he played a lot of in our games, and probably one of the best Tracers that we've ever seen, right?
Yeah, after playing against Earth, playing against random Tracers was pretty easy.
Yeah, and Tracer also has a pulse bomb, so if you're not careful and the enemy team has a Tracer, you need to make sure that you don't get stuck by this bomb, because it sticks on you and it will kill you in one shot if she manages to place it on you, and can also kill people who you're standing by. So in the right hands, Tracer is a very deadly character, but just like Sombra and Genji, Tracer requires a lot of finesse to be able to play properly. So
Yeah, I think something that you could also note about Tracer is that she's probably the face of Overwatch. She's on all of the promotional materials and in the trailer, and she's the face you see when you buy the game. She's probably the one that they've used to probably market the game the most, and because of that, I think they've made her personality very. Shall we say, gregarious and very forthcoming. She's very
British.
very British, and and in all of the stereotypes that go along with being British. And
I love that, very British, not just British, but very British.
Yeah. Well, her main tagline is "Cheers, love." So there you go.
The cavalry's here.
Yeah.
All right. Next up is Doomfist, but we don't have Doomfist in the game to talk about yet, because Doomfist is probably coming to game this week, and none of us have played him on PTR. But Doomfist will be from Nigeria, and will be a very fast DPS character, kind of in the like of Tracer, but more melee focused, I think, if I read the materials right.
Yeah, he has almost like a dragon punch attack, it looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's basically all right there in the name. It's a fist of doom, basically. He'll punch you, and it will be effective.
Yeah, so we'll talk more about Doomfist if we ever revisit this podcast at another date after we've had the chance to play him. Next up, we're moving on to defense characters. I'll just run through the names of them quickly. Bastion, Hanzo, Junkrat, Mei, Torbjorn, and Widowmaker. So starting off with Bastion. Oh, we have good fun with Bastion, don't we?
We have good fun ripping on Bastion.
Well, no, you were there last night, Jeff, when Alan got that Bastion play of the game.
Oh yeah, no, it's so Bastion is one of the cheaper characters to play in the game. He has the ability to sort of turn himself into a stationary turret with about 500 bullets in his clip, which is a lot more than almost anyone else in the game, and he does insane damage. And Blizzard has recently given him the ability to heal himself as he walks around. So he's become one of the more
go-to cheesy kind of characters because his
Yeah.
ultimate ability also turns him into a tank. So when we're short of DPS or we're short of defense or we're short of healer or we're short of tank, let's just pick Bastion. He's one of each.
I was going to say hated characters, but yours was that's probably a better thing to say.
Well, I mean, you can only watch so many Bastion play the games before you start laughing uncontrollably, like happened last night, right?
That's right.
So yeah, Bastion is definitely one you got to watch out for. If you're ever looking for something to cheese the enemy team with, get a good Reinhardt or other defense tank on your team to protect you, and you can do lots of amazing work with Bastion. All right, here's another hero that we like to rip on sometimes, Hanzo, the other Japanese character in the game. Hanzo is effectively the crossbow, bow and arrow sniper from TF2. The sniper TF2 bow and arrow gun thing is escaping my brain right now, but basically Hanzo has
The Huntsman?
The Huntsman, thank you.
I don't even play TF2 anymore. It's been a while, but I remember it still. It's been ages.
So Hanzo is able to fire arrows infinitely, and he also has an obnoxious ability called the scatter arrow, which he can fire, and then once it hits something, it will scatter into a bunch of other arrows, and has the potential of one-hit killing lots of characters. So, yeah, I don't know. How do you guys feel about Hanzo?
The same way the internet does. We don't like him.
I think if you nerfed his scatter arrow so that it didn't one-hit you, I think it would be much more tolerable because, once again, you have to be able to aim with him, but with the scatter arrow, you really don't. And there's a lot of people that play him and really don't know what they're doing or can't aim properly. So that's one of the problems is that they pick him, but they're not really that good at him.
Hanzo can also climb walls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And his ultimate ability is a dragon that if you're in the path of this dragon, you're dead. So, I mean, it can be fired from across the map. So if you don't see it coming, I don't know, you're dead, and you might have taken more notice to make sure that you weren't in the path of that dragon. But I don't know. That's Hanzo. As you can tell, we aren't a fan of that character.
I mean, there are definitely situations, like all of the defensive characters,
right,
situations and maps where they're very useful.
There's situations where every character in this game is useful.
Yeah.
I think if you are able to pair his ultimate with other ultimates, they can do very well. If you have a hero that can lock the enemy team in place and then have your Hanzo ult go off, it basically stops them from being able to escape it and take them out really quickly that way. So if you're able to coordinate with your team, it can work quite well, I think. And if you can't get out of the path of the dragon, it's going to be dragging you to the spawn room again.
I'm sorry. Okay.
All right. Next up is one of your guys' both favorites, Junkrat, who is from Australia, and I'll let Jeff explain what Junkrat is.
He's basically the demo man from TF2. He's basically firing these, I mean, I guess hit on impact grenades is the best way to describe it.
Yeah, or glowing tennis balls.
Glowing tennis balls. He's got a bear trap that he can lay down and trap anyone. He's got a remote mine that he can use to shoot himself up in the air or throw at enemies. And then one of the things that makes his ultimate a little bit different is that it's sort of like the old remote control car in the Call of Duty games. The character becomes stationary, but then you can control this tire that has a bomb in it anywhere on the map for, I think it's like 6 seconds or something like that. And that can do a lot of damage.
And if the enemy team is up on their map awareness, they can hear this tire coming in, spot it, and kill it. So that's a counter to Junkrat that can be employed in the game if you're finding Junkrat is putting out too much damage. And, I think the way that we like to talk about Junkrat is just that if we need damage to, basically suppressing fire for a certain area or a certain group of heroes, we will probably bring in a Junkrat, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. Next up is Mei. All right, you're going to do the explaining on Mei, Patrick.
Oh, but I have never played Mei before. I don't know. Maybe you should go for it, Shane.
All right, Mei.
Go, Shane.
Mei is a character from China, and she specializes in freezing people. She has an ice blast gun that, if focused in on an enemy target for a long enough period, it'll just freeze them in place, allowing her to conveniently stare at them in the face with this smile that she puts on, and driving a frozen icicle into their forehead, most notably killing them most of the time. And then Mei's other abilities are a huge ice wall that she can put up to prevent enemy team members from crossing a point, or if the Mei is being obnoxious, prevent friendly team members from crossing that certain point, like leaving a spawn room. Mei also has the ability to heal herself by putting herself into an ice cube, and this restores her 250 life points. And her ultimate ability is a massive area of effect, Freezy, that freezes anyone within that area, allowing the rest of the team to come in and do work on them, or allow Mei to drive some more of those icicles into their skulls. So I personally find Mei really obnoxious. I don't know about you guys.
We used to have a really good Mei player, ProLeezy, until they patched it. He would get his ult so quickly that he would spam his AoE ult. I mean, once every minute, depending on what was happening.
I believe that was called, what did he call that? Diversionary tactics on the point to prevent them from capping, or something along the lines of that.
Something like that.
So, in the hands of a very competent player, Mei can be obnoxious to the enemy team, and if the Mei is bad, they can be just as obnoxious to your team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's something that makes her so disliked in the community, is that not only is getting frozen and stuck in place, and then having this, short little girl come up and then point her gun at your face and you can't do anything about it while she's smiling at you. Not just that, but it's also the fact that you're getting frozen in place. And as Overwatch is very much a game of movement and diverse movement and how you're able to move around the map in different ways, having a hero that stops you from doing any of that, it kind of sucks when you go up against it, especially when you're caught unawares or alone.
Yeah.
Or when it happens on your own team and you have a troll who announces before the round starts that no one's leaving the spawn room.
All right. Next up is Torbjorn, who is from Sweden and is effectively the engineer, because he is able to build a turret and generate armor for your team. So he can build this turret, and he can get it up really quickly. I'd say within 10 seconds, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
I'd say, fully buffed in under 10 seconds.
Yeah, this turret does a lot of damage. So if you're on a map that has a choke point and you just need something to watch over it, you might employ a Torbjorn, and he will basically shoot anyone and anything that comes through that. And he even targets air targets like Pharah. So Torbjorn, despite, not being played all that much in competitive, does have a role in various quick play scenarios, and is kind of fun to play from time to time, because after he gets his ultimate charge up, he will basically send his turret into berserk mode, where it will start firing so much faster and firing missiles at the targets. And it's not uncommon to see Torbjorn plays of the game, or see Torbjorn leading the team in eliminations or damage. So Torbjorn, I think, is a mixed bag. How do you guys feel about him?
I think sometimes teams don't really counter him effectively because they aren't able to either get close enough to his turret to be able to do the damage, or they focus too much on the turret and they're not able to take care of the rest of the team. So I think a lot of the problems with Torbjorn actually come around actually dealing with him rather than players playing him wrong or anything like that.
All right.
Yeah, I agree. I almost view him I put him in the sort of Sombra, Tracer, Genji class, and that he's there to be a distraction. And I think that's what he's good at doing.
Yep. All right. Our last defense character is Widowmaker, who is from France and is Overwatch's only dedicated sniper. There's really not much to say about Widowmaker, I don't think, aside from the fact that it's a sniper. It has the ability to use a grappling hook to get up into very precarious positions to get the vision down on the battlefield of where the enemies are to snipe them. And when she reaches her ultimate, she's able to reveal the enemy team for a number of seconds to your team. So a good Widowmaker on a map with a long corridor or a place where she can set up and see all the enemy targets can be very valuable. So I don't know if we have anyone who really plays Widowmaker that much, do we?
Earth plays her sometimes. We see a lot of Widowmaker play on the new map, the Lunar Colony map. There's a lot of long hallways. She's really good for that map.
No.
I also seen a lot on King's Row, especially in the first point, because they're huge corridor with long sight lines, as well as higher ledges that you can go up to.
Yeah. And, Widowmaker, kind of like McCree and Genji, if you can't aim, you're going to be a detriment to your team because Widowmaker needs to hit these headshots in order to make the kills count, because if someone gets shot, they're going to start moving again right away. So. All right, moving on to tank characters, which, as their name implies, these guys have lots of hit points and are there to suck up damage. We have D.Va, Orisa, Reinhardt, Roadhog, Winston, and Zarya. So D.Va is a Korean video gamer from South Korea. I think we would have been told if she was from North Korea, right?
She's very clearly from South Korea, as she's a professional StarCraft player, which is a breaking of the third wall that you don't actually see very often in video games.
That's right. So D.Va does little damage from afar, but if you can get D.Va up really close to the enemy, she can do a good amount of damage. But her main ability is the ability to fly around quickly and get into position to block enemy fire. She has what's called the defense matrix that effectively negates any kind of incoming projectiles towards your team, whether it be Pharah, Genji, Soldier. D.Va can just negate all that for a number of seconds and prevent that damage from coming into your team. So that is,
or even certain ultimates as well.
Right,
that's right.
Ultimates can go in and
Hanzo
get
ultimate
stuck as well.
I've seen her eat a Mei ult.
Yeah.
So, and D.Va might seem like a character that, okay, there's not too much skill to be played here, but good positioning can, especially in competitive, let D.Va suck up some of these ultimates and prevent them from being used on your team. And when they fire these ultimates off and D.Va negates them, they're gone. So they have to recharge that ultimate ability. We have a good number of D.Va players, and I think we feel D.Va is a pretty good tank to rely on, unless, like, for example, they have a Mei or a Zarya, because as we talked about previously, Mei and Zarya are D.Va's hard counters. So, anything else on D.Va before we move on?
She's got great mobility. This is the only thing I would add. Her ability to fly around and move around the map, I think, is one of her really good assets.
Yeah, she's probably the fastest tank, right?
It's her or Winston.
Yeah, okay. We'll get to Winston just.
Although Reinhardt does have an ability that gets him pretty far pretty quickly. But I think D.Va is also a hero I think we should note. It's actually changed quite a bit from launch. The defense matrix timings have gotten down to pretty much nothing, so that it recharges really quickly. Before it was on a cooldown. Now it's on barely anything at all. The damage has been buffed, so it's actually a lot more viable character to play nowadays than it was a year ago.
And her ultimate is a huge nuclear bomb that, unless you're protected by a Mei wall or a shield from another tank, will probably kill you unless you have a large amount of hit points. So D.Va is good for clearing a control point or a cart or an objective. All right, now the slowest character in game, Orisa. This is something that you play quite a bit, Jeff. Orisa is from South Africa and is a robot designed to protect everyone, and she wants everyone to stay behind her barrier, obviously, right?
Yeah, that character is saying that all the time. I'd advise you stand behind my barrier. Like,
Please move
yeah,
behind the barrier.
that's right. It's a combination of another character named Reinhardt where she can actually shoot a shield out wherever she wants it to. She's got a big Gatling gun. She has the ability to aggro players into a single spot, and she has a defensive ability that lets her take, I think, half the damage that she would normally
fortify.
take. Yeah. And then her ultimate boosts everyone else's damage that is within line of sight of this little pillar that she puts down on the ground.
Yeah, her special attack. It's quite amazing what this character can do. Orisa is one of those hybrid characters that is really a tank and a damage character, because it's not uncommon to see an Orisa blocking upwards of 20,000 damage, but also doing 15,000 plus actual damage. I think we've all had situations like that before. So Orisa can be used well. It's just a matter of finding the right place for, I think, the barriers and shields to make it useful.
Yeah, I agree.
But also very, very slow. So that's something you might also consider if you're considering playing her, is that you might not want to do this if she is too slow for you. Next up is Reinhardt from Germany, and he is the quintessential tank in this game because he has a huge shield, a big, I guess what we would call club that he can use for his main melee attack, and a fire strike, which basically lets him do damage and protect anyone who stands behind his huge rectangle, which blocks 2,000 hit points worth of damage. And, I think Reinhardt, when it comes down to it, is one of the characters that we always pick as a go-to in competitive.
Yeah, and it's one that I play quite frequently as well, because it's really good in that it's not only is it very useful, but you really don't have to aim whatsoever. I mean, it's just a hammer as an attack as well as the fire strike, so there's really hardly any aiming to go along with it. But I think the most important thing about Reinhardt is being able to be positioned well in front of your team so that you can protect them as they advance on a point, or as they move the payload forward, or even as they're trying to stop an enemy team from getting any closer. And I think something that makes him so useful is that he has that huge shield that soaks up so much damage that even other characters don't really equal that shielding ability, I think.
Yeah. And, you didn't mention the other side of Reinhardt that makes him really offensive, is that he can charge an enemy, immobilize that enemy, and squish them up against a wall, effectively killing them. So that is another way that Reinhardt can pretty much kill anyone on the enemy team who is not a tank. So you got to watch out for charging Reinhardts that could come out of the middle of nowhere, because otherwise you're going to end up dead. And I think we have all had that problem before on Overwatch.
Oh, yeah.
I think the other thing that Reinhardt's really good at, I know, Patrick, you do a great job of this, is that when you're holding your shield up, you can't do anything else from a gameplay standpoint, but you can communicate with the rest of a team where everyone is. So whoever's playing Reinhardt also sort of takes on a leadership position in the group by letting people know, okay, we've got a flanker on the right, we've got a Pharah up top, and that's really, really important if you want to be successful in the game.
Yeah, and wherever Reinhardt looks when you have the shield up is where his shield will face. So if you have that Pharah coming in from the sky, you just got to tilt your head up in order to prevent those Pharah rockets from hurting your team, providing they stay close to you.
Yeah. And something that I've noticed while playing Reinhardt quite a bit is you can't actually tell if anyone's behind you when you're facing forward. So a lot of times you can get in there and you can have your shield up and say, okay, guys, let's go in. And then you go in and discover you're on your own and your teammates are way behind you and don't actually know. So quite commonly, even if you aren't that good at communicating, you're going to have to do it anyways, because you're going to have to say, okay, guys, are you ready to go in? Are you all behind me? Because I really can't tell.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lonely feeling, isn't it? Like, I'm on the point. Oh.
And, what Reinhardt really also does, his most powerful thing he can do is his special attack, which will knock down anyone in front of you in a cone. So if you have 4 or 5 people right in front of you who are enemies and your ultimate ability is ready, you just tap that ultimate button and those people just get knocked down right away. And then the rest of your team is free to pick them off. You can go in with your hammer and sweep them all away and end up killing, well, the entire team. So Reinhardt is another character that can pull off a team wipe and can enable your team to pull these wipes off. So Reinhardt, just goes to show why we always pick him.
And can I just say that even though they've nerfed the cone a little bit, if a pixel of your character is inside that cone, you're going down.
Yeah. And something that's really interesting, someone who would be listening to this and saying, well, how is it able to do so much damage? And I think when you're just holding right click and keeping the shield up, is I think in certain scenarios, you're going to want to keep the shield up and defend. And then other scenarios, you're really going to want to go in and swing that hammer around and get some damage off. So there's going to be situations where you're going to be blocking like anywhere's up to 50,000 damage, but there's others where you can actually get gold damage on the team just by picking your spots, really.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of something for everyone there.
That's why we love Reinhardt. Mm-hmm. Another tank that we all that we play quite often is Roadhog. He has the most actual hit points in the game, 1,000 hit points, and he is able to just... Is it 1,000? Or is it
600?
Yeah. Where did I get 1,000 from? I'm off with my numbers today.
That's okay. That's what I'm here for, isn't it?
That's right. You're here for many things. But Roadhog is from New Zealand, 600 hit points. They're pure hit points. He has the ability to heal himself with a rebreather, and he's also got a hook. And with this hook, he can basically grab anyone who is in front of him, providing you hit them, pull them up close, fire his scrap gun, use his hook again to melee them, and it's practically an instant kill for anyone who isn't a tank. The whole point of playing Roadhog is to be really good with that hook. So I know that's another character you play, Patrick.
Yeah, it is. And again, it's also one where you don't have to even aim that well because it's kind of a scrap gun that has really short range. And then you just hook where you think they're going to be at that particular moment, bring them closer, and then you just shoot once and they're usually gone. But it's another good character if you don't really have good healers, or if you don't really have that many of them, or if you just kind of go off your own, because his heal ability is able to bring him back 300 hit points, which is half, very quickly. So he can soak up a lot of damage. Even though he doesn't block any, he can soak them up and then heal them right back, which is really good because it means that's damage that isn't going to be going on to another team member that isn't able to heal them so quickly.
Yeah, and Roadhog has also been the subject of a few nerfs recently, specifically regard to his hook. If you would previously hit someone with your hook as Roadhog and they were to go behind a corner, for example, the game would still find a way to pull you directly to Roadhog, but they made it recently so you have to still be in line of sight in order to be hooked by Roadhog. So this is an example of Blizzard taking care of their game when the players and something becomes broken, because it's not really fair to have Roadhog hooking someone from across the map and through a wall.
Yeah, through the geometry from across the universe.
Yeah. It did make for some very fun highlights, though. That's for sure.
It depends what end you're on, though.
Exactly. Depends on what end of the hook you're on, I suppose.
All right. Our second last tank is Winston, who is a monkey, and he has a Tesla gun. So he actually is a very smart monkey. So he's not, a dumb monkey that they captured from the zoo or anything like that. He's a
scientist.
Yeah, he basically has what we call Winston's tickle cannon, because he doesn't really do that much damage. But he's good at disrupting the enemy team because he can knock them around a bit with his jump ability and his ultimate ability, which when he does that, he gains a huge amount of hit points and is basically able to disperse an entire team. So I think we would probably use Winston in a case where we need to clear a control point or when we need some secondary damage. I think that summarizes him quite well, right?
The only thing I'd add is he's really good at countering Genji, because Genji can't reflect the Tesla cannon.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And he also has a bubble shield that he can put down for the entire team. Less powerful than Reinhardt's, but it covers a huge dome, so it can protect you from a lot of things in the area that are hurting you. And Winston is one of those characters that you don't need to be able to aim with. So good for people who don't want to aim.
Yeah, and he also has a lot of hit points. So if you're on a team that's dying really quickly because you don't really have any bulky characters, he's a good team member to pick for that, because he can get in, do what he needs to do, and then jumps away without getting killed. So it's quite a useful hero for that regard.
Indeed. So our final tank is Zarya, who is from Russia, and she's a bit of an unconventional tank, I think I would say. Would you guys agree with that she's unconventional?
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah, I would put her more in the sort of tank support hybrid class.
All right, so Zarya, on her own, uncharged, does a very small amount of damage. She can do damage, but not that much. So what Zarya needs to do to be successful is she needs to use her shield. And she can put the shield on herself, and then when she gets hit by enemy fire, this charges her up with a certain energy level. But one of her other abilities is also the ability to project the shield onto a friendly teammate. So if you are having a tracer on your team that is going into a firefight and there's going to be a bunch of people shooting at it, you put this Zarya shield on your friendly tracer. Tracer goes in, doesn't take any damage. Zarya gets charged up, and after this engagement, Zarya is free to go in and do more damage because of that. So that's why we call Zarya unconventional, is because she needs to take damage through her shield and have the team also take damage through the shield in order for her own self to do damage, which, when you think about it, is a very unique gameplay mechanic, and I don't think that exists anywhere else that I've seen in any kind of video games.
Yeah. It's not often in other video games you hear people shouting, "Don't shoot that person," right?
Because if you have a Junkrat on your team and the other team has a Zarya, you don't want to really be having your Junkrat fire where the Zarya is going to be, because that just charges that Zarya up and lets her do more damage, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, and Zarya's ultimate ability is a gravity well that sucks everyone in the immediate area, and basically is one of those priming alt factors for someone like McCree or Soldier 76 or Reaper. Basically, Zarya is an enabling factor to enable one of the offense heroes to take out the entire team with a ultimate ability. I think we've even seen Earth do this before with Tracer take 4 people out who were in one of Zarya's gravity wells too. So with a pulse bomb. So
it also pairs well with Junkrat's ult or Hanzo's ult, because those are ones that do a lot of damage in a specific area, and it really pairs well because they aren't able to get away from it.
Yeah, and they're going to be changing the way this ult works in the future as well. So I think they said they were going to be making it so that if you're in Zarya's gravity well, you're not going to be able to use any of your abilities, right?
That would
maybe.
definitely be something.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that's what it is, but don't quote me on that. I might be wrong.
Okay.
Yeah. I think another thing about Zarya that's really interesting is that she can really save your life, especially when there's other players that are using their ultimate on you. So not only can she, pair well with friendly DPS, she can also counter the enemy DPS pretty well. Say McCree's getting his Deadeye ready and he's got you lined up. If Zarya puts the shield on you, that won't do any damage. If Reinhardt's charging you and you're about to hit the wall, she puts the shield on you and you don't get killed. I mean, Junkrat tries to do his tire and he tries to blow it up. Zarya just puts down that shield and you're good to go. So I mean, it's really good in a way that it's a very unconventional tank in how she plays, in that she's able to save you kind of from afar when she's not anywhere near.
Yep. All right, now we're going to move on to supports, which is my favorite class of hero to play. Our support characters in Overwatch include Ana, Lucio, Mercy, Symmetra, and Zenyatta. So, Ana is a healing sniper who, believe it or not, is also the mother of Pharah, which, you don't have families normally coming to video games like this, but in this case you do. Ana can basically heal people and damage people from afar with her sniper rifle. She also has a sleep dart, which allows her to put enemies to sleep so that they can't move for a number of seconds, though they do get waken up if they get hit by enemy fire. And she also has a grenade that supercharges the amount of healing that her healing does, and any kind of friendly healing that you might have in that area. And I think what I missed there is that Ana also has the ability to prevent the enemy team from healing themselves, which is really powerful and really annoying if you're fighting against it.
Mm-hmm.
What do you guys think of Ana?
I think the more comp I play, the more I see her on both sides. People are really, really good at saving that sleep dart until you're about to ult. They hear the sound that a certain character is ulting, and then they'll pop you with the sleep dart, and it'll almost cancel your ult, and you feel really bad. I see her almost as much as I see Mercy now in some of the comp games.
Yeah, that makes sense. And, Ana also has the ability to, increase the amount of healing that Mercy, Lucio, and Zenyatta do, even Roadhog as well. So, there's no reason why you don't have an Ana, providing you can have someone who can shoot. And it's for that very reason that this season I've decided to make getting better at Ana one of the things I'm doing in Overwatch.
Oh, good.
So, our next hero is Lucio, which is a huge favorite of almost everyone who we play with. So, I'll just explain quickly what Lucio is, and then we'll talk about why he's so great. So, Lucio is a black music man from Brazil, and he has the ability to heal the team in an area of effect and also speed the team up. So let's say you got an Orisa, for example. If you pair an Orisa and a Lucio, being Orisa doesn't feel that painful because you can actually get to the point faster now because you have a Lucio on the team. And Lucio's ultimate ability basically delivers some temporary hit points to your team so that they can soak up an enemy ultimate attack or just, have more comfort in an enemy engagement. Then there's lots of fire happening. So, Lucio is a great healer and a great support character in general, but why have we been playing Lucio more recently?
The only reason I can think of is because they actually boosted his damage up somewhat, and they made it so that wall ride was easier, and he's just a really good character for healing, in that he's able to passively heal the entire team that's around you without even having to do anything. And I think that's something that's good for players of a lower skill set, is that they're able to still really impact the team really well without having to do that much.
Yeah. And Lucio...
So I sort of view... Oh, sorry.
Well, I'll just say quickly that Lucio also doesn't really need to aim that much, but you can continue, Jeff.
Well, I was going to say I sort of view Lucio the same way I view Reinhardt when he has his shield up. You can sort of be the general on the team and call things out, where it's harder to do that with Ana when you're trying to snipe specific people, or some of the other supports where it's hard to look at the entire map at the same time. Whereas, like Patrick said, you're not really doing anything except hitting E with Lucio, and I just see him as sort of like the quintessential support character in the game.
Yeah, and Lucio also has the ability to wall ride, which amplifies his speed as well. So, like you said, very quintessential hero, can do everything, can do damage, can heal, and, is also a good character if you have a ton of map awareness. And, that's why right now Lucio is the most played character in Overwatch, and has been the most played character in Overwatch since the game came out. So he's very important. And I think this is a good testament to Earth with this right now, because last night he came back to Overwatch after a little bit of a break and was able to, just pick up Lucio and be very successful with that.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you're starting off Overwatch and you want to play support, Lucio is a great one to pick. All right, next up is Mercy. Mercy is my main character in Overwatch. I think we could all say at this point, right?
Yes.
I believe so, yeah.
So Mercy is a dedicated healer, can do lots of healing for your team. She also has the ability to damage boost your team. So if you're not taking too much damage, you can get on a Pharah or McCree and amplify their damage by what I think is like 25%. So Mercy is an all-around great hero to have around. What also makes her great is that she is very mobile in that she can fly to any teammate on the map, providing there is vision and they're within a certain range. And this is also not only a good way of getting to people to heal them, but is also a good way of getting out of trouble. So Mercy has all that going for her. Plus, the ultimate ability of this character is the ability to resurrect the team when they're dead. So once you charge up your ultimate as Mercy to 100%, you can bring people back from the dead. And if everyone was to die at once, being clustered in a group of 5, you could potentially bring back 5 people in one go. And that is what makes Mercy so powerful. And I think that's why we bring her along for so many of the games we play.
Yeah, and I think whenever you're going up against an enemy Mercy, she's always, no matter what the composition is, Mercy will always be the number one target that you want to kill first, because you either take out 6 or you end up taking out 11.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If you don't take her out first, because she can do a lot of healing, basically negating a lot of damage that you put in, and using that resurrect. By healing, she's able to charge her ultimate up very quickly.
Yeah, and she can really charge fast on the tanks like Roadhog, Zarya, Reinhardt, and is able to get res in under a minute most times. So having Mercy around is really a positive thing for the team.
I guess that's something that we haven't mentioned, is that each class of hero builds their ultimate fastest by doing what they're designed to do. So if you're a tank, you build ult fast by blocking damage. If you're a DPS, you build ult fast by doing damage and getting kills. Same thing for the support. If you're healing or buffing people, you'll build your ult faster that way.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next up is Symmetra. And boy, do we have mixed feelings about this character, don't we? So Symmetra is one of the characters that you don't need to aim with at all. Because if you get within range of an enemy, her beam of death will lock onto you, slow you down, and kill you. And not only can she do this with her beam from her gun, she can do this from 6 little mini turrets that she can deploy throughout the map. So if you walk through a choke point unannounced, oh, Symmetra's got you, bang, you're dead. So you can tell we have mixed feelings about Symmetra at this point, I think.
Yeah, she's much more of a defense character than an actual support, I think. But she does have abilities to provide the team with shields to give them a bit of a health buff. She's able to put up a shield generator that gives an even greater amount of shields. She can put up the teleports, much like the engineer teleport from TF2, to get you back to a point faster. And is able to do a lot of damage with that microwave beam gun that she's got, and a lot of damage can be put on you very quickly in a short amount of time if you don't know that she's there.
Yeah, I feel like the entire community is split on her as well. You know, someone will pick her in a lobby, and half of the people are going yes, and half of the people are screaming no. She's just kind of a polarizing.
Yeah, see, I don't feel Symmetra has a place in comp, but if you're playing quick play or something else, you can definitely do a lot of good work with Symmetra. So it depends on the team and the situation, and I mean, depends what kind of day you're having and what you want to rain on people, right? So, All right, our last. I appreciate the note there, Jeff. Thank you. Our last character is Zenyatta, who is a very squishy support and probably, I want to say, the most unique character in the game next to Zarya. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, he's certainly one of them. I think the ability that he has of being able to heal teammates with a glowing orb that kind of follows them around for a bit and heals them as they take damage, but also an ability to put a orb of discord on them on enemy teams to basically make them more susceptible to incoming damage. And the fact that he does a fair amount of damage himself and being able to put this discord orb on them makes him actually really good as an attacking player.
Yeah, because I think it's a 25% debuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's right.
So any damage that the opposing character takes that when they're marked will be amplified by 25%. So there are characters with this that Zenyatta can kill almost instantly. Tracer, for example, from a distance, Zenyatta could also take out a Soldier 76 as marked. But all in all, that damage boost is something that teams like a lot of. So as you can see here, the support characters play a huge role in this game between Ana, Lucio, Mercy, and Zenyatta based on what you need. So if you need a debuff, you'll go with a Zenyatta. But if you need pure healing, you'll go with some combination of Ana, Lucio, and Mercy. And I think like you said, Patrick, Zenyatta is often overlooked for the amount of damage that it can do, which is absolutely immaculate. So Zenyatta in the hands of a capable player is a really powerful thing to have on your team. So
yeah, and I think that his ultimate, being able to put out his transcendence, and he turns basically into a race car. He can zoom around the map to any of his teammates and basically heal them back up.
Yeah,
to
400 heals per second he does with that active. So
yeah, and he's able to heal them up very quickly. So say that an enemy Zarya has trapped you in her gravity well, and then the Pharah is coming in and going to use her ultimate. You just pop the Zenyatta ult, and that does any damage on you. So in situations, it can be used very effectively.
All right. Anything else on Zenyatta or any of the other heroes before we move on, either of you?
I think we've covered them all pretty well. Very in depth.
All right. Well, before we move on to our question of the week, we'll just do a little bit about competitive. Overwatch competitive is broken into various rankings. If you rank at less than 1500 skill ranking, you're bronze. 1500 to 1999 is silver. 2000 to 2499 gold. And then upwards we go to platinum, diamond, and then master. And then finally grandmaster at 4,000 plus with a new ranking every 500 points. We tend to hover around the high silver, low gold, the three of us, but we also do have a number of people who are ranked in platinum at this time. So,
I made platinum last season. But I don't know. Here's my feelings on competitive rankings. I feel like for the most part they're pretty good, but I think that different people could have different rankings for different characters. Yeah. Like I think that I'm a platinum support player, but I'm a gold DPS and tank player.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And, in competitive, I think the point of SR and rankings is largely to determine who you play with. I think one thing that is a problem with Overwatch is that too many people put a huge emphasis on their rankings and don't want to play if they're losing too many ranks, when in reality, just as in real life, the only way to get better at something is to practice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a mixed bag. And, the system isn't perfect, but I think it's good enough for what Overwatch does with it. I'm not too concerned about moving beyond gold, but one day if I do, that's fine. But at the same time, I really don't want to fall to anywhere near bronze as well, and that hasn't happened. So basically, if you're playing Overwatch, just play to what kind of suits you best in competitive. If you find you're a good offense character, play offense. If you find you're a good support, play support. And your SR will tend to reflect that based on what you play, I think is a good way of putting it, right?
Yeah, and I think your SR also has a lot to do with how much you play as well, because I tend to play a lot less than a lot of the others in our group, and I think my ranking all reflects that as well. Because I think in the last season I was put into bronze, and I took that as quite the insult, and then I ended up making my way back up. But it was quite insulting when I got placed there, because then I couldn't actually match with some of our platinum friends who were able to bring it along, and I felt like, oh my goodness, I am the newbie of the group. But I didn't really think that my play really reflected that. I thought I was actually doing quite well, especially in the placements, as I won 8 out of 10, I think it was.
Right.
So really, your ranking is just what I feel is an arbitrary number of what they decide to give you at any given moment in time.
Yeah.
So I think it could use a little bit of work in how they match you with your SR and how you're able to group up with other players. But for the most part, I think it works. And if you do get a lower ranking than you want, all you have to do is go out there, work, and practice, and you'll be back up to where you want to be in no time.
Well
Yeah, I
said.
agree. I think they have some of the things like playtime or maybe hit percentage weighted a little bit too heavily. Because you'll see these videos on YouTube where someone goes from bronze to master over the course of a month, and you'll see them saying, all right, in order to get to bronze, I've got to make sure this is my excuse me, this is my accuracy rating, and I can't do these things. So people have kind of figured out what the game is looking for when it puts these rankings in there, but I think Patrick's right. I could still use some tweaking.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when it comes to actually playing competitive games, there are a number of metas that can be used for Overwatch. I think one of the, what would you guys say was the largest meta and the largest shift away from meta that we've seen in what we played? What was the most, what was the meta that stuck out to you guys the most of time in Overwatch?
I think the one that I've seen most often, especially in the gameplay videos that are all up on our YouTube channel, is probably the 2-2-2 meta, which is 2 tanks, 2 DPS, and 2 support. It kind of provides a bit of balance in that you have a good attack, a good amount of damage soaking by the tanks, but also really good healing. So it provides you a good balance to be able to counter a lot of varied compositions that you might face.
Right, and this is kind of what we were talking about earlier about finding a spot for characters like Sombra and Widowmaker, because they take up one of the DPS slots, so they need to really be doing a lot of work to fit into the 2-2-2 and competitive. Hence why these characters really aren't chosen that much in competitive games, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Another one that we ran up to in the past was 3-2-1, which was it 3 DPS, 2 tanks, 1 healer? Or
I think it was 3 tanks.
Yeah.
I think it was 3 tanks, 2 DPS and 1 healer.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that was providing a lot more hit points on your team, so that it would be a lot harder to take down. So you'd see this a lot on defense, where there'd actually be way more tank players than there would be defense.
So, for example, Roadhog, Reinhardt, and maybe Zarya.
Yeah, and that would be a huge wall that you'd have to be able to get through to be able to get to where you want to go. And combined, I think that's 1,500 hit points, right?
Right, and then if you throw in an Ana and a Mercy healing them, you can imagine what happens with that.
Yeah, exactly. And if you have someone like Mei, or even a really tough offensive character like a Genji, you can basically stop anyone from going anywhere.
Right, because as we talked about, heroes like Roadhog and Reinhardt and Zarya are also capable of doing huge amounts of damage. So hence why you can get by with the 1 DPS character like Mei or Genji, right? So, which one do you guys prefer, 2-2-2 or 3-2-1? I think 2-2-2 is the more general one, the default that we go with.
I think it depends on, I feel like in competitive, a lot of times players are picked because of their ultimates. And I think one of the big differences between comp and quick is how you use your ultimates. In quick, you'll have a lot of people using ultimates just on their own. In comp, you're always trying to pair at least 2 ultimates together. So I think depending on who people have selected or which ultimates are trying to be paired up, I think that kind of dictates which one of those 2 I would be in favor of.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
And then there's a third, which we have wanted to experiment with, but never really got around to. It was the dive comp, or the flying dive comp, with Winstons and Pharahs and tracers involved. So a dive comp is basically a setup that ensures that you're going to get where you're going, and you're going to get there really fast. So you would choose characters like Tracer, Sombra, Pharah, Winston, Lucio. Who else do you think we'd choose for a dive comp?
I think a true dive comp is something that is able to do a lot of damage all at once. It's kind of like the opposite of the 3-2-1. As the 3-2-1, it provides a lot of health, so that it's really good on the defense, whereas the dive comp is really good for attack, in that, say, you probably, as a normal dive comp, you probably have 4 DPS, 1 tank, and 1 healer, because you're going to get to where you're going to go, and you're going to do a lot of damage, so you won't actually need the health. And if it's pulled off accurately, it can do a lot of damage really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Did you say Diva? Sorry, I missed that.
Yeah, I think Diva would be in there as well,
okay.
Mobility wise. So, and that's something that I've wanted to try for a while, but we haven't had the idea to pull it through together yet. But that'll probably be something we try later in the season. So, yeah, dive comp. Any other metas that you guys have on your minds that I didn't note here, or that you guys would like to discuss?
I mean, sometimes we go for just the straight cheese comp. Like, if the first half of a round didn't go well and it doesn't look like things are, because sometimes you do get matched up against a team that has diamonds on them and you're like, okay, this might not happen. We'll try to put together the most annoying comp possible, and sometimes that can be fun to play around with.
Yeah, that would involve like May, Symmetra, Torbjorn,
Bastion,
maybe? Bastion.
Torbjorn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, before we move on to our question, there is a resource that I'm going to point everyone to, and that is the Overbuff.com guide to hero tiers and the meta report, basically an abridged meta of what is currently being used in the Overwatch gameplay. Currently, Lucio and Winston are classed as S-tier characters, meaning they're played greater than 95% of the time. We also got Tracer and Diva at Tier 1, which is greater than 80% of the time. Tier 2s include Genji and Zenyatta. Then we move down to Tier 3, which are 1 and 5, 20% of the time. Pharah, Mercy, and Soldier. Then Tier 4s, which really aren't used that much, include Sombra, Ana, and Reaper. Then we got a whole bunch who are used very, very seldomly in competitive, including Widowmaker, McCree, May, Zarya, Reinhardt, Roadhog, Torbjorn, Bastion, Hanzo, Orisa, Symmetra, and Junkrat. And these are based, I should mention, purely on competitive games that are currently being played. So even though this is what appears to be most used inside the competitive games, there are going to be cases where you're going to want to use some of these characters that aren't used at all. Like, you're going to have cases where you want a McCree or where you want a Reinhardt, I think. But I think this is a good indication of the kind of gameplay that we're seeing at this point in Overwatch. Would you guys agree with that?
I think it should be noted that Overbuff takes its statistics not from what's being played generally in competitive. It's actually taking its statistics from professional Overwatch competitions,
right? Okay.
Like professional competitions where there's a video set up where you can actually watch them live, or there's competitions where like a LAN or something like that. So it's taking from those, not from the like the general grandmaster or anything like that. These are the actual professionals who do it for money. And I think in that sense, you kind of have to take it a bit with a grain of salt, because it might, what may be working for the professionals probably might not work for the lower ranks, because the metas can change based on your skill level.
Right. And not everyone's going to have,
point.
competent Zenyatas and Tracers to be the sole DPS on a team, nor a Winston, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
But, nonetheless, it is an interesting thing to see how the very top 1% of the population is playing Overwatch, those who play it professionally. So it's an interesting website, but nonetheless, don't take it as gospel. It kind of just shows what people see as the ultimate in true Overwatch competitive. So, All right. Well, that pretty much does us for the Overwatch section. You guys ready to read Trekkie's question?
Yes.
Okay, so this is from Trekkie from our Overwatch team. If you were in charge of Easter eggs in Overwatch, what little things would you like to add in that the average person has no idea about, but the average nerd will be like, ooh, I know that one. So let's start with you, Patrick.
Well, I think what's fun about Overwatch is they actually have added in a lot of Easter eggs that most people won't know. For instance, in the arcades, there will be computers set up where they've got the Hearthstone screens on them, or they've got the Lost Vikings from the old Lost Vikings game, or from StarCraft 2 that you might remember from the single-player campaign. And there's lots of different references to other video games or other sci-fi based things hidden in the maps that you probably won't notice on first glance, but if you really go around the maps and have a look, they're there for you to notice.
So what would you add?
What would I add? I don't know. I think there's certainly a lot in there already. So I think where I would add it in would probably be in new maps. You could add in a bunch of different Easter eggs depending on what kind of map it is that you're adding.
All right, that's fair. How about you, Jeff? You have any ideas?
I kind of feel like what they're doing, like Patrick said, is kind of perfect. You don't want to overstuff it, so it kind of becomes annoying and a distraction. But at the same time, like you said, there are nods to other Blizzard games, and McCree's pistol is a nod to the Half-Life gun from the original Half-Life. I don't know. I think
there's a Soldier 76 gun that looks like the Call of Duty gun.
That's right. I think there's already a lot of nods to other video games and a lot of pop culture things in there already. I don't know that I would add anything. I think they're doing a good job as it is.
Yeah. If I had to choose one thing that they could add, it would be to the Call of Duty Soldier 76 skin. Make his fusion grenades make the noob tube sound when they hit someone. You know that old satisfying sound from Call of Duty, right?
Oh yeah.
The good old thunk.
It's like a kerplunk sound, right?
Right.
Yeah, something like that. Something like that. So. All right. Hopefully that satisfies Trekkie for that answer. But hopefully you guys enjoyed hearing us talk about Overwatch. This is something that we all enjoy quite a bit, so that's why I figured we'd dedicate an episode to it. We're going to move on to tech news right now, unless there's any major objections.
I think that's good.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. So you guys will know that these AI experiments are always fun to see what AI and neural networks can do in terms of comparing them to humans. So several weeks ago, an artist and a coder named Janelle Shane tried to train a neural network to name paint colors. And the results weren't that great. One of the names that came out in the first batch was Stanky Bean, which turned out to be a bit of a dull pink color. They also had Stoner Blue, which was gray. And then there were also 3 shades of brown, known as Dope, Burble Simp, and Turdley.
These are quality names, I think.
That's right. So this, of course, made the developer, completely rewrite this AI and focus in on some more neural network training. And then he realized that the problem was that she cranked up the neural network's temperature variable, which meant that it was picking less likely or more creative possibilities as it generated paint names letter by letters. So then she turned the temperature variable down and found the names were still pretty silly, but at least matched the colors most of the time. Plus, they were a little bit more varied. So it was getting it right if it was a gray or a red, but it was still kind of bland. So, for example, we had Red Weed, Night Red, Cinderite Green, Stand-In, Brand Hers, and Was White as some of these new names that were incorporated for the second batch. And then the developer further incorporated suggestions into the data set on how to tweak the colors, and looked at maybe if she represented the colors differently internally, that it might work better. But that really didn't work that well, because a computer sees color different than a human does. So that it actually made it worse. But the actual thing that ended up fixing this problem and making the names work better was a new data set with existing colors from companies like Benjamin Moore and Bear and even XKCD. So the results of this were, quote unquote, surprisingly good. And in general, the noted lesson is that better data produces better results. So, for example, there is a color named Flipper that is kind of a light oceany blue. Lemon Nose, which was oddly a skin-colored shape. Clay Cow, which turned out to be green, of all things. Dry Custard, which looked like custard. And Spiced Rope, which was a very, very dark green. So that was a little bit odd. But I think the oddest one goes to Polar Forest Ma Pepper. That's the full name. And it was purple.
Okay, is there any chance this computer is just trolling all of us and it actually knows what it's doing?
Well, that's the thing. All these names and colors are based off of sampling existing colors that were given to it based on Benjamin Moore, Bear, and other paint color samples. So based on how we name our paints, this is what statistically it thinks it should be.
I see.
Yes. And there was also a Hall of Fame included, which included some decent colors that could actually be used in the real world. Names here included Bull Cream, which was a creamy color, Copper Panty, Primple Brown, Stoned Blue, that's a bit of an odd one, Sting Gray, Rose Colon, Stamped Candy, Moan Pope, Blue Child, Sandbark, Farty Red, Dorky Brown, Cold of Tail, Drimple, and Dad.
Ah, yes, the dad color.
Yes, Dad was cyan. So this is apparently what neural networks say we should be naming all our colors based on what we've named colors in the past.
Those are some pretty fun names, that's for sure.
Yeah, they are. And I figured I'd go for some lighthearted tech news this week because it's always amazing to see what people can do when they throw this kind of computer thing together. So you can read the full article and whatnot. It'll be linked in the show notes at update.rsbnb.com. Some of the initial colors from the Tumblr article are just off the wall. I mean, they made no sense at all back then, because they had one that was named Black Hand that was a seafoam green color for some reason. So, yeah. Oh, and there's also one called Dope as well, but
I'm guessing that wasn't green. Eh?
Yeah, that was red.
Naturally.
Yeah, of course.
Anyways, check this out if you want a good laugh. Next up in tech news, Google has released an updated version of the Google Drive software for Mac and Windows. The difference being this time is that you can have this piece of software back up files on your computer directly to Google. So Google is basically saying, here, we'll give you 15 gigabytes and you can back up your computer to us and we'll just let you do this for free. And you can even, use these access these online in Google Drive, access your photos there, and use this to back up your computer, which no one has really done before on the Windows side, unless you use the built-in OneDrive tool in Windows 10. So it's really good to see Google doing this, and their pricing really isn't that bad either. You could pay $9.99 a month or $99 a year for 1 terabyte of cloud storage with Google. And this, of course, applies to your entire Google account. So if you're looking for a place to back up your files, or you're just, maybe wanting to move some of your essential files off to the cloud and not have them stored locally, you can do that now with the Google Drive app on Mac and Windows. So give that a look if you're looking for something to do that with. And yes, I know privacy concerns and whatnot, but honestly, I would trust Google the most and Microsoft to do something like this, so I'm not too worried about what Google is going to do with files that you upload to them. So, but of course, if you have a potato internet connection, that's not going to really serve you that well. So, either you guys think you'll give this a try. I know you won't, Patrick, because of your internet, but...
As the aforementioned potato internet person, yeah, I don't think I will. I've got a one. I think it's a 3 terabyte external hard drive, which I'm just perfectly fine with doing the built-in.
But what if there's a fire and it burns down?
It's not going to burn down because it's with me. It's got it with me right now.
Okay, all right. How about
you better bet that if there's a fire, I'm going to carry it out with me.
How about you, Jeff? You interested in any kind of this cloud stuff?
Maybe. I don't know. I'll have to look into it. Yeah. My internet should be able to do it. But...
Yeah, and I mean, 15 gigs is a lot these days. I think it's enough for most people to store their main files and whatnot.
Yeah.
So.
Depends on how much music or movies or pictures you have, though. Of course.
That would suck it up very quickly.
If you've been gaining them for quite a number of years, as a lot of us probably have, 15 gigs isn't that much whatsoever, actually. Yep. But for free, that's not too bad. That can give you your essentials.
Yeah, and I mean, even if you needed 100 gigs, that's only $2 a month.
Yeah.
So
that's true.
All right, so some space news this week. NASA's Juno spacecraft spots Jupiter's Great Red Spot is the headline. So we have some new photos of Jupiter's Great Red Spot. Apparently the spot appeared around 300 years ago, and anyone who has looked up the sky and looked through a telescope will have seen this on Jupiter before. But this is the closest we have ever been to the Great Red Spot here. And the spot itself is 10,159 miles in width, which is roughly 16,000 kilometers wide as of April 2017. And that makes it 1.3 times as wide as the Earth. And that is a huge storm that is happening on that planet. So we're studying that, and we're trying to figure out what exactly is with the Great Red Spot. And there's a number of great photos here on the NASA website that you can have a look at if you're interested in astronomy, and they're huge, high resolution that after they've been sent back from the Juno spacecraft. So always interesting to see what is out there beyond, what feels like our own little world and is actually relatively close to us in our solar system. So, yeah. Any thoughts on...
And learning more about space is always really interesting because it means that we'll have that knowledge for the future, for when we have the technology to go and explore this stuff a bit more in depth.
Yeah, you did that in your astronomy this past year, didn't you?
Yeah. And there's a lot of new stuff that happens all the time in astronomy and in space that changes our whole perception on how things are, it's really quite fascinating.
Yeah, it really is. Jeff, you have any thoughts on Jupiter?
I'm just amazed at our ability to build and engineer technology that can do this, to actually help us learn what's going on. I mean, think about how difficult of a problem that is.
Yeah. I mean, not only from building the hardware itself, but determining what needs to go into the calculations to get it there, right? Because it's not just a simple send it up and point it in one direction. You got to factor in so many things with that. And lots of people involved in that, lots of computation and whatnot, which I know something is, you enjoy numbers, don't you?
I do enjoy numbers.
They're so innocuous, aren't they?
Sure.
Well, I mean, on their own, numbers can't hurt anyone, right?
That's right.
Because once they're applied, they can. So we've had this discussion before, but I figured we'd just bring it to the podcast, right?
That's right.
All righty. Well, moving on to some other things right now. We have our July Skill of the Month update, which is focusing in on magic. We have a bit of a two-way race going on here between Pernasius and X-Blades. Pernasius is in First place with 4.2 million magic experience gained, and X-Blades is in second with 4.1. Then we have Flash in third with 1.7 million XP gained. But as it is magic and that is relatively easy to train in RS, anything can happen, and we're only about halfway through the month. So we'll be definitely watching this going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Okie dokie. Onwards to some achievements of the week. I'll grab the first three and then, or the first ones through the 9th, and then Patrick, you want to take the last three? Sound good?
Sure.
Okie dokie. So first up, we have LPAC with 99 Thieving on the 12th, then Ariant with 99 Construction on the 10th, and then Vodka B with 99 Invention on July 9th, and Simbakura also on the 9th with 99 Invention.
Yeah, and on the 8th and on the 7th, Underking was able to get to 120 Slayer and 120 Mining the day before, which is pretty amazing. And also on the 6th, Soul Quest was able to get to 99 Agility. So congratulations to all of those for your achievements.
Nicely done. Lots of mining in there with level 120. So good job.
Good work, players.
All right. So pick of the week. Jeff, I believe you got that for us. What do we got?
I've got the pick. So Zelda, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild's first DLC is my pick of the week. It's got a lot in there. There's I think like 45 room gauntlet that you have to go through where you're stripped of almost all your items. It's very challenging. There are some cosmetic additions. There's a hard mode, which is ridiculously hard. It's a nice addition to the game.
And of course, this is for the Nintendo Switch and the Wii U, I think, right?
That's correct.
So you can get the DLC on both platforms if you have it. And I know from what I've heard from you and others is that this game is really well done. And I think if people are enjoying the game right now, they'd probably enjoy the DLC, right?
Absolutely. This game, Breath of the Wild, is kind of ruining other games for me.
That's quite the statement.
This is one of the best games I've ever played, and I could have a 2-hour podcast on why that is. So that's all.
Wow. All right. How much does it cost?
$60.
Okay, so it's basically like an expansion for the game then.
Oh, I'm sorry. The expansion is $20.
Oh, okay. All right. That's a fair price for an expansion then, I was going to say.
Well, and that also gives you more story content at the end of the calendar year.
Oh, neat. All right.
Yeah.
So it seems like Nintendo's really hit it out of the park with this game then. That's great.
They delayed it. Yeah, I mean, they delayed it for a couple years. They really made sure they got everything right, and it's a masterpiece.
Alrighty, sounds good. Well, since you guys don't play RS, I guess I'll just ask you what you guys have been up to this week if you guys want to share anything. Overwatch related or anything in general. I know Patrick, you might, or maybe not, depending.
Well, there's been a lot that I've been doing recently, especially since the last time I was on this podcast. I think the last time I was on this podcast was before the new year. I think this is the only time I've been on in 2017. So since then, there's been quite a bit that I've done. We've picked up Overwatch as one of our games that we play, as you've heard over the past course of the podcast. Something else that I've been doing recently is I started up a new podcast with you, Shane, called The Right Side News. And through that, if you are Canadian and you like political news or just news in general, or if you fall anywhere on the spectrum, have a listen in. It's a shorter podcast than this one, of course. It's about 30 minutes long, and in it we cover the major news of the week and other sorts of things like that, which are lots of fun. I think you can find out more at rightsidenews.ca, of course.
And contrary to what people think of the name, it is not purely based on right side conservative news. It's the right side of the media, cutting through bias and sensationalism in that media. Yeah,
and I think I think we give a pretty basic rundown of most news of the weekend. We try not to opinionize things so that people are able to get the content that they want. So we've been starting that off. Started off in January, and I think we're up to 25 episodes now. So yeah, so that's the main thing that I've been doing since then. Other things, just been continuing on in gaming with Overwatch and World of Tanks as my multiplayer games with all of you guys, and for single player, just going back through some of my old catalog and trying to get through some of the games on Steam that I haven't played in a long time, or that I haven't actually played before, even though I got it a long time ago.
I assume it's safe to say you didn't buy anything for this year's summer sale.
I did get a few things that I've been waiting, but they were all like really cheap. Like I don't think I got anything that was over $10. I think at this point in my life, you might as well just wait a couple years for games to go down in price, and then you can still get them later on. So yeah. I think that's true for a lot of things, really. If you can get them on for a good sale, it's a lot better than paying full price for it and then getting burned later.
All right. How about you, Jeff? Gaming wise, or anything else you'd like to share?
Gotten back into Rocket League a little bit. It's been fun. They just had their second anniversary patch come out, so there's some new cosmetics, a new I guess it's heads-up display. That's probably not the right word.
Interface.
The right term. Interface. There's the term. There's a new interface, so that's another game you can just sort of jump into without having played it in a while and still be relatively good. I've been playing some Mario Kart for the Switch, been killing fools on the internet via.
What do they call that anyways? It's not Xbox Live, SwitchNet, or I know on the Wii it was Wii Play.
I don't think there's an official name for it.
Huh, they should have that.
Or maybe there isn't, I don't know.
All right.
Yeah, but I've been doing a lot of that, and a little bit of Overwatch here and there.
All right, sounds good. This week for me on RS, I have discovered that the water altar is now mere steps away from the Shattered Worlds bank. So a little bit of a tip out there to anyone making anything to do with water runes, combination runes involving that. Just use the water altar. It's mere steps away, only about 5 seconds away from the bank. It's really quite amazing that they have banks so close there. But aside from that, just collecting GP and maybe working towards some monetary goals to start the 120 Herblore goal up again. But that's about it this week on RS. So anything else before we go?
Thank you for having me on.
Not a problem. It was nice having you. And, of course, we'll be back next week with a Star Trek Online special of RSBANDB Update. And thanks to both of you for volunteering the time here to come and talk about Overwatch. It was very nice.
Yeah, it's nice to come back. It's always a pleasure to come on to the RSBANDB Update. I always enjoy being here.
Thank you. Well then, with that being said, thank you for sharing your time with us, and we'll see you next week for another episode of RSBANDB Update.